It was for a disposition project, what we call a disposition project, basically to sort the records of ICTR of the last 20 years. Yeah, in 2012 it was not even 20 years, it was 18 years. And that's it, basically going through storage, record storage, and try to understand, try to get the organizational structure of the records in order to sort the ones we need to keep, the one which unfortunately won't have the pleasure to end up in an archival storage, because as you may know, we as archivist, records manager, we cannot keep everything because of space issue and because probably also of value, potential value. So to take these decisions, we use very big tables, which at that time would have been my Bible. I would use it every day, probably around 100, 200 pages of basically, it's a table telling you the kind of records each and every offices create and the length it needs to be kept. So you would look at the ones to be kept permanently, the ones to be kept 5, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and all the different records created by ICTR would have different retention, basically. I moved to the institution which would receive the records, and actually what we could call archives, because we would only transfer from ICTR to this newly created organization, MICT. We would only transfer the best of the ones which passed the test, basically. And there I was, my mission was slightly different. I was in charge of access issues, security classification questions, and in charge also of creating new tools for researchers to find what they are looking for. And it was a very exciting time because it was a new organization, so there was a lot to create. And to be completely open, we were not starting from scratch. There were some already existing tools, but they were easy to make better, if I may say. So it was a great project, and ICTR and MICT. I was basically acting at two different stages of the life cycle of a record. It was my first experience in a judicial institution such as ICTR, so it's very special, very specialized. So we have to we are faced with very clear security classification issues, which links to the life of people, basically, because some people they potentially put their life in danger to come give their testimony to this tribunal. So this is not a small issue. So this is something where security classification becomes more important when you have to deal with the security of human beings. So this would be very specific to a tribunal, I would say. And also the fact that the security authority, security classification authority, is a judicial authority. So it's a judge, basically. And if the judge decides this way, the only way to change it is to ask a judge again. So there is, in my knowledge, the systematic, the potential systematic declassification of records is a little bit specific in tribunal, and maybe a little bit more complicated and bureaucratic, because if you have to go through a judge, a judicial authority, to change every single classification, security classification, it creates a big factory, if I may say. So the security classification is something very specific, and also, well, yeah, the fact that it's a legal institution, it has to be public as soon as possible, as the actual judgments or filings are actually tendered in court. So it is, we don't have much time, because normally in archives we usually say the records, the archives need to cool down a little bit before being accessed. And in this case, The idea is to make them accessible as soon as possible for the public ones, because we have a public mission to give a justice to the people. So it has to be communicated as soon as possible. So this would be something also very specific to judicial archives. And right now, yeah, that would be the two things which for me would be very specific. They have to show that justice happens to the world, I would say, and especially the societies which are involved in any conflict. In this case, to the Rwandan society, that something has happened, that the international community. And I'm not talking on behalf of ICTR, but this is something probably that the international community felt they had to do, and it's good to do it, but it's also good to the actual victimized society to have access to the result of it. And in archives, especially in archives, as an archivist, we don't keep materials for nothing. It has to have a purpose. We should not keep the records in boxes in basement. Nowadays it's not in basement anymore, but in the dark. They have at one point to be used for mechanism of reconciliation, transitional justice. So they have to be accessed, they have to be shared, because they belong to everyone. They don't belong only to, in this case particularly, to the international community, to the UN. They belong to the victims, they belong to the historians, they belong to everyone, basically. So it is very important for the archivist to do this public relation work, but it's a very different work than preserving and giving access. It is a very specialized skill as well, which unfortunately not all archival institutions do and have. Yeah. Well, archives is, for such a recent organization as ICTR, it's always good to start, how could I say, on a good, to start on a good pace. To have tools in place, because it makes things so much easier, simpler. So it's very important to basically bring to the attention of management, and it's a part of the work of archivist, records manager. It's to bring to the attention of the people who decide to top managerial positions, to bring them to the attention of, okay, what we are doing is unique. In the case of ICTR, it has to be documented in a way that it will be possibly accessible. So to bring to the attention that everything we do as a unique organization has to be recorded. And this has to be thought prior to start the operation of such an organization. So I would say that the lessons learned is you have to hire record managers as soon as possible in order to put in place records management program, record keeping program, archival solutions, in order to make things easier when time comes to think about archives, about legacy, about memory. So always think in advance. Yeah, that would be the motto of a record manager and archivist.